Okay, so let's dive into this deep dive on grief, loss, and healing. Our sources really, well, they challenge one of the biggest ideas out there, this neat, linear, five-stage path for loss. The mission here is to give you, the listener, a more dynamic, sort of modern way to think about how we actually adapt. First up, we probably need to nail down the language. We tend to throw around three words, right? Grief, mourning, bereavement. Grief is the internal stuff, that raw feeling inside, yearning, shock, maybe despair. Mourning, that's the external bit, what you show the world, funerals, rituals, that kind of thing. And bereavement, that's just the situation, the objective fact that you suffered a loss.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how that internal grief feels pretty universal, wouldn't you say?
Hmm.
But mourning, wow, that can look so different depending on your culture, your traditions. Getting these terms clear really helps understand the whole picture, the private pain and the public need for structure.
Okay, but here's where our sources got really interesting for me. Those famous five stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I was genuinely surprised to read that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed them mostly for terminally ill people facing their own death, not really for the folks left behind.
That's the core issue, precisely. There's almost no solid evidence showing that bereaved people go through these stages in some neat order. And applying that framework rigidly, well, it can actually be harmful. People feel like they're doing grief wrong
Hmm.
if their experience is messy and doesn't fit the steps. It sort of pathologizes what's often a very natural, very human, and yeah, messy response.
Right. So if it's not a ladder we climb, what does grieving actually look like? How do we, do it?
We need to shift our thinking towards something more dynamic. The main alternative model discussed is the dual process model, the DPM. This model suggests that healthy grieving isn't about sticking to one thing. It involves oscillation, moving back and forth.
Oscillate.
Yeah, between two main ways of coping. First, there's what they call loss-oriented coping. That's facing the pain head-on, crying, reminiscing, feeling the sadness. Then there's restoration-oriented coping. This is about adjusting to life without the person. So maybe learning new skills they used to handle, finding new routines, kind of rebuilding your identity a bit.
That sounds tiring. Oscillating back and forth. Do people consciously choose to do that, or is it more subconscious?
Oh, it's mostly unconscious, definitely. But just knowing about the model can give you permission almost to seek that restoration side, to take a break from the intense grief. You might be looking at old photos one minute, feeling devastated, and then next you have to figure out how to pay a bill they always handled. That necessary distraction, that shift in focus, that is the oscillation. And finding some kind of balance between confronting the pain and, getting on with necessary life stuff that seems to be key for adapting long term.
Okay, that makes sense. But, a lot of the typical grief symptoms, sadness, being exhausted, not interested in things, they sound an awful lot like clinical depression. For you listening, and even for doctors, how do we tell the difference? It seems crucial.
It's a really important distinction. The sources point to one major difference: self-esteem. In grief, the sadness often comes in waves, right?
Yeah.
And you can still have moments of warmth, positive memories mixed in, but crucially, your fundamental sense of self-worth usually stays intact. You still know you're okay as a person. With clinical depression, though, that feeling of emptiness or numbness is much more constant, pervasive. And critically, feelings of worthlessness or self-loathing are really common red flags for depression, not typically for grief itself.
And if that really intense, disabling grief just persists, goes on for more than a year, say, and that adaptive oscillation just isn't happening.
Right, that's when it might cross the line into what's now recognized as prolonged grief disorder, or PGD. A key feature there is often this intense feeling of identity disruption, like a fundamental part of who you are is gone and you just can't adjust.
So, treatment for PGD aside, what's the overall goal then, according to these models?
Connecting it all, the goal isn't really to get over it or move on in the way we sometimes talk about it. It's more about finding ways to grow around the grief. Your life expands again, but that relationship, that loss, remains part of your story, an enduring connection, even though it's painful, integrated.
And the sources had some practical tips too, right, to help manage that oscillation. Things like simple routines.
Yeah, basic self-care routines provide structure. And another interesting one was setting aside specific grief time.
Like deliberately making space for it.
Exactly. Maybe 20 minutes a day just for active processing, journaling, looking at photos, whatever feels right. It can help make the grief feel less like it's constantly ambushing you, more contained, perhaps.
Gives you a bit more control.
Potentially. And there's a final thought, too, that the sheer pain of grief, It's actually evidence of love. The depth of sorrow often reflects the depth of the connection. It gives the pain a kind of meaning, doesn't it?
That's a powerful way to frame it. So here's something for you to think about. If that love endures, how might actively honoring the person's values or maybe continuing something they cared about, how could that shift your experience? Could that transform a painful memory into something more purpose-driven, a connection that actually helps guide your own path forward, something to mull on?